There is some irony in making a summary of the master and his emissary. Indeed, one of the core themes of the book is about the limitations of attempting to simplify, categorize, and tidily represent unique and complex phenomena. Making this video is like trying to condense Macbeth down to a 5-point plotline summary. The essence of the content will be largely lost. And yet, nonetheless, let's get started. The thesis of the master and his emissary involves how the left and right hemispheres of the brain interact with each other, inhibit each other, and perceive the world. Sparing much detail, the left hemisphere is the tool-making, language-smithing, analytical, grasping hemisphere, which controls the right side of the body. In lower animals, it might be engaged focusing on and catching prey or food. In the human animal, the left hemisphere is used to understand mechanisms, use tools, and read and write language. The only emotions more heavily lateralized to the left hemisphere include anger and disgust. The left hemisphere tends to represent the world as categories and symbols that can be manipulated, as is natural to the hemisphere that is primarily involved in utility. In split brain studies, the left hemisphere is more likely to assert confidence despite not knowing. This unwarranted confidence and assertion, despite lack of information, is often indistinguishable from a lie. Patients with paralysis of the left side due to right hemisphere deficiencies might deny that a disabled appendage is even theirs, with no seeming awareness of the absurdity of such a statement. The right hemisphere is a more dispersive hemisphere that deals with understanding, intuition, insight, humor, metaphor, and all emotion except anger and disgust. The right hemisphere reads faces, appreciates music and tonality, and is activated when confronted with novel experience. The right hemisphere perceives and understands spatial relationships and is needed to make sense of the continuum of experiential reality, and is thus more primary than the left hemisphere. In other words, the left hemisphere relies on the right hemisphere. These findings are backed by patients who have undergone strokes, predominantly in one hemisphere versus another, split brain patient studies, and cautious interpretation of EEG brain scan studies. While the two hemispheres are constantly working together, alternatingly supporting and inhibiting each other, each hemisphere is capable of sustaining a worldview on its own, albeit with some deficiencies if acting alone. Yet there is a critical asymmetry of the hemispheres that make the right hemisphere more reliable and more important than the left hemisphere. In this vein, the metaphor of the book's title is from a fable as told by Nietzsche, the implication being that the right hemisphere needs to be the discerning master, and the left hemisphere is just the emissary, or faithful servant. So then, what can we take away from all of this? Through acts of attention and disposition, we can favor one hemispheric worldview over the other. The risk lies in overvaluing the tool-making, analytic approach of the left hemisphere without a proper understanding of its limitations and dangers. McGilchrist argues that we immensely err in overvaluing the left hemispheric analytic disposition in the Western world, and that we are largely blind as to how much we mistake our mapped reality for the real thing. Ambiguity and implicit meaning are not vogue in our culture, and anything that isn't readily put into words isn't valued in the age of the explicit. Imagine an engineer sneering at the paintings in an art gallery because he believes it all to be quite useless. Imagine the paperwork saying a patient is dead is of higher authority than the living patient sitting and breathing in front of the nurse in the hospital. Imagine someone mistaking the cross of Jesus Christ as simply a piece of wood, rather than seeing it as a signpost pointing towards the transcendent. Over-reliance on the rigidity and myopic views associated with the left hemisphere keeps us rigid, caught in pretense, too expectant to be faithful to the unfolding of reality, more loyal to the letter of the law rather than the spirit of it, and recalcitrant towards the vitality and richness of existence. There is evidence that the views associated with mental illness, such as schizophrenia and autism, are associated with a hypofunctioning right hemisphere, and that the patients are overly reliant on their analytic left hemisphere to compensate. The reality distortions described by schizophrenic patients have analogs with the modernist views that have arisen in Western culture. Could there be a similar, albeit milder, reality distortion occurring in each of us, as we live in a society with such preference for reductionist and utilitarian thinking? We must be very careful to recognize reductionist thinking, materialism, dogma, overbearing bureaucracy, vapid labels and categories, and any excessive pursuit of authority as the sinister workings of the left's hemisphere's take on our world. This is the gist of the Master and his Emissary, albeit excluding an abundance of richness and depth that couldn't possibly be translated into a short-form video. And at the risk of sounding hyperbolic, I don't think I have read a book that is more important and relevant to our times. In an age where representation, categories, and rigid ideology dominates how the world is perceived and utilized, we are in dire need of a reset. We are in dire need of a change in the disposition and the attention we give towards each other and our world.